The icy wind cut through Officer Daniel Harper's uniform like a blade as he stepped out of his patrol car onto the deserted highway. His shift was almost over, just another quiet winter night on the outskirts of town. That's when he saw it, something small and trembling on the shoulder of the road. At first, he thought it was a piece of trash caught in the snow. But then it moved. What he discovered in the freezing darkness would change his life forever. Daniel approached slowly, shining his flashlight toward the tiny figure. Curled up against the guardrail was a puppy, thin, soaked, and shaking so violently it could barely lift its head. The temperature was well below freezing, and snowflakes clung to the puppy's matted fur. Daniel's heart dropped. How long had this helpless little creature been out here? Abandoned, lost, hit by a passing car and left to die? He didn't know, but he knew one thing for certain: if he hadn't stopped, the puppy wouldn't have survived the night. Without hesitation, Daniel took off his heavy police jacket and wrapped it around the shivering dog. The puppy let out a weak whimper, too exhausted to resist. "Hey there, little guy," Daniel whispered gently. "You're safe now." He cradled the fragile bundle in his arms and hurried back to the warmth of his patrol car. As the heater blasted, the puppy slowly stopped shaking and rested its tiny head against Daniel's chest. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Daniel was supposed to finish his shift and head home, but instead he drove straight to the nearest emergency animal clinic. The vet on duty examined the puppy and confirmed what Daniel feared: severe hypothermia, dehydration, and malnutrition. The little dog was barely clinging to life. The doctor asked if Daniel was the owner. He hesitated, then replied, "I guess I am now." Over the next few hours, Daniel stayed at the clinic, refusing to leave the puppy's side. He watched as warm fluids were given, as blankets were wrapped tighter, as careful hands worked to save a life most people would never have noticed. Around dawn, the vet smiled and said the words Daniel had been praying to hear: "He's going to make it." Daniel named the puppy Highway, after the place where their paths had crossed. When he finally took Highway home, he expected to care for him until a shelter could find a permanent family. Daniel lived alone, worked long hours, and had never planned on owning a pet. But life, he was learning, doesn't always follow plans. The first few days were challenging. Highway was frightened of loud noises, cars, even sudden movements. He flinched whenever Daniel reached to pet him. It was clear the puppy had known hardship long before that cold night on the road. But Daniel was patient. He fed him, bathed him, talked to him softly after long shifts. Slowly, trust began to grow. One evening, after a particularly tough day at work, Daniel sat on his couch feeling more exhausted than usual. Without warning, Highway jumped up beside him, rested his head on Daniel's lap, and looked up with grateful, loving eyes. It was a small gesture, but to Daniel, it meant everything. For the first time in years, he didn't feel quite so alone. Word of the rescue spread quickly. A local reporter shared the story on social media, and soon people from all over were praising the officer who had saved a helpless puppy. Adoption offers poured in. Families with big houses and big yards wanted to give Highway a perfect home. Daniel knew he should be happy, but the thought of letting the dog go filled him with an unexpected sadness. He realized something important. He hadn't just rescued Highway. Highway had rescued him too. Daniel had joined the police force to help people, to make a difference. But the job was often heavy with stress, long nights, and painful situations. Somewhere along the way, he had built walls around his heart just to cope. This little dog had somehow broken through those walls without even trying. When the animal shelter called to ask about putting Highway up for adoption, Daniel took a deep breath and said the words that changed both their futures. "Actually, I'd like to adopt him myself." From that day on, Daniel and Highway became inseparable. The once frightened puppy grew stronger, healthier, and full of life. He greeted Daniel at the door every night, tail wagging furiously, reminding him that no matter how hard the day had been, he was coming home to love. Months later, Daniel drove down that same stretch of highway with Highway sitting proudly in the passenger seat. The snow was gone, the sun was bright, and the world felt warmer somehow. He glanced at the dog who had once been a freezing, forgotten bundle on the side of the road and smiled. Sometimes, Daniel thought, we believe we are the ones doing the saving. But life has a way of turning things around. A single act of kindness, a moment of compassion, can ripple outward in ways we never expect. That cold night, an officer stopped to rescue a puppy. What happened next wasn't just heartwarming, it was life-changing. And it all began with one simple choice: to care. The message was clear and powerful. No act of kindness is ever too small, and sometimes the souls we save end up saving us in return.